We're live. It's turbo time tonight, Saturday night. Obviously, time for boost. I got a couple things we want to talk about. One, I've got this. Got a package from Summit Racing. It sounds big. We're going to open that, see what's inside. And then there's a story behind that because obviously I would know what's in it because I order it. so it's not going to be a big surprise to me. But tonight also we're going to talk about turbo stuff. And before we open that, we'll talk about the thumbnail is a do-it-yourself turbo kit, basically. And I wanted to show, even though this particular one, the thumbnail is on a 4.6 liter 2 valve, because this is a test I did long ago for the guys at Hot Rod where we took a bone stock Hemi, a bone stock modular Ford, and a bone stock LS, and just put boost to them. And one of the things I did on this one was run it in non-intercooled form because I was doing other tests while we had it on there, which is, always a good idea when you're when you have dyno time. You may as well try to test as many things as you can. Back then, because I was doing stories, so I would try to write as many stories as I could with the available dyno time. And then obviously with video, you can also do the same thing. But the interesting thing that this is showing is it's a junkyard motor that came from a local junkyard. It's a 4.6 valve. This one is I don't know if it was this was a PI motor. And the thing to take note on is how simple everything is. Obviously, we have bigger injectors in it. We have a standalone management system. You could do this with just the bigger injectors and the big enough fuel pump with a factory ECU, as long as you have the ability or somebody that you can take it somewhere and have it tuned. You can add boost with the factory ECU, as long as you can compensate for the necessary fuel that you're going to use with the turbo. You can do that. It will work. You don't need a standalone for that. But the important thing about this is that, first of all, you have a turbo. So that's you have the motor that you're going to turbocharge, which is good. It's a good start with. In this case, it's a junkyard motor. Could be an LS, could be a Cadillac, could be whatever you want it to be. A modular Ford V10, which would be awesome. But this was a 4.6 liter. So we started off with our NA motor, and then in this case, it was just a stock one. Basically, we ran it with headers and no accessories and things the way that we normally do. And then we wanted to put boost to it. What happens if you just put boost to it? Even just like non-intercooled, like 7 or 8 pounds or whatever, even if you do that. Well, what you need is basically, as I've been telling you, if you guys have been watching this channel for a long time, just get all the exhaust to the turbo and good things will happen. And that's exactly what we did. In this case, we were using shorty headers, but you can use the stock exhaust manifolds too. Note that all that we did was make a Y pipe. Basically, we ran the exhaust from one side over to the other side. We ran this under the oil pan in this case. You would route it wherever you can, wherever it is allowed in your chassis. Under the oil pan is fine as long as you put enough clearance there so it's not heating the oil up too much. Not that you're going to be under boost for 20, 30, 50 minutes at a time. But all you have to do is merge those two together. So you can see in the photo, if you guys can look at it, the exhaust from one side, they merge together right by the other side. They Y together. And all of this is our very simple MIG welded stuff, nothing elaborate. This is all exhaust tubing that you could go find at the wrecking yard. You could go get it from a muffler shop, but you don't even have to do that. And then we have a bend. We have we merge the two, probably 2 1/4 or 2 1/2 into a single 3. We flare the 3 out a little bit so that we can mount our T4 turbo flange, because the turbo that we used was a 76 millimeter from CX Racing. We have a T4 flange. We weld on the T4 flange so that the turbo is positioned correctly. We have 3.5 inch or probably 3.5 inch exhaust on a V-band exiting the backside of that 76 millimeter turbo. We have one, this is a tile wastegate, I think, that we used. We have one wastegate there. And so we have the outlet, and basically all that is a short standoff of pipe with the flange that comes with the wastegate when you buy a wastegate. And then you have a V-band that holds the wastegate in place. We have a single line running from a pressure source over to the bottom of the wastegate so that it opens up at whatever the spring pressure is, and you could pick your spring pressure. Most of them come with something around 7 pounds, and that's a good place to start at low boost. We didn't even run an intercooler on this. We didn't run water method injection. We didn't run anything. It was very, very simple. I've run lots of stuff. I ran my Vortec at 7 pounds for years and years and years, 85,000 miles worth, and it works just fine. It would be better with an intercooler. I made sure that I did have a cold air source going to the thing, so it was always grabbing outside ambient air. But let's face it, some days outside ambient air is 30 degrees. Some days it's 110. So that would make a difference. And having an intercooler would be better. But in its simplest form, this is really kind of what a turbo kit is, a do-it-yourself turbo kit. You don't need to buy dedicated turbo manifolds. You can use stock exhaust manifolds. You can do it with wrecking yard exhaust that you find over there, just tubing. Oh, I'm going to need a bend kind of like this and kind of like this. And your rudimentary welding skills will make all of this work and go together. You just have to position the turbo in the right spot. This discharge tube you can see is a conglomeration of tubing that we already had laying around. But you could this is aluminum. You could even do it in steel. You could use the exhaust that you find in the wrecking yard, do it out of steel. If you're really going like all in on the low buck thing, all of that stuff is possible. So you can make that work. The drain hose, you could go clip off a section of heater hose from a car in the wrecking yard. I mean, all of this stuff is feasible to, spend as little money as you can. You could take injectors and get them decapped, although I don't recommend that route. Only because if you do that, you usually have to do a bunch of those so that you can get 8 ones that are going to be consistent. And to know whether they're consistent or not, you have to flow them. And so it's more steps. So injectors would be one thing that I might, spend some money on and make that right. But it's not terribly difficult, and you can add boost to it. And the nice thing is, even when you add 7 pounds of boost to anything, to an LS, a Cadillac, or Big Block Chevy, or Big Block Ford, or whatever it is, it makes a major change in the power output. So somewhere near 50%, not quite 50%, but close to that. And so a 50% change in power, no matter what you're starting with and what you're ending with, a 50% change in power is a big change in power. So that's nothing but good. So that's what I wanted to cover tonight, is that this thing shows not just how to turbocharge a mod motor, because it's exactly the same. Exhaust together over the turbo, have a wastegate, have the exhaust coming out of the turbo. You got to have an oil feed. You got to have a drain. We put a hole in the drain pan and put a return fitting on there. And then the boost from the turbo goes over into the throttle body. If it goes through an intercooler, that's better. And there are lots of cheap intercoolers like the Chili Bomb, which is one of the things that I need to test. I would totally run a Chili Bomb on this, because this thing is this motor was like a 250 or 60 horsepower motor, I think, something like that. And so it was not, it was the way that ran on the dyno was, I think, less than 300. So the Chili Bomb would be fine at, 7 pounds. We're talking about 450 horsepower, less than 500 horsepower. So that Chili Bomb would probably be fine for this. It would be a good application. And those little Chili Bomb air to water intercoolers are not ideal for high power stuff, but they certainly would be fine probably for this thing. Or you could run these inexpensive air to airs, and then you have to run. They have kits for them that you can have all of the aluminum tubing and stuff, and all of that would work. So doing a turbo kit yourself is an option rather than wanting to have a dedicated kit. A kit's nice, and they take care of all the things, and it bolts on in minutes with simple hand tools. They don't always do that, but you can do it yourself, and you can do it inexpensively. And it's something that even like the first time guy could probably do. So that definitely works. So let's see what you guys are doing here. I just want to make sure there's no turbos. I need no weirdness, basically, is what I was looking for. Just want to make sure all that's going good. So now we can open up our package from Summit Racing. So let's see if we can do this here. By the way, we took Milo for a walk today. He did not catch a squirrel today. Ooh, fancy. Look at this. That's always a good box to get, right? Does anybody recognize that? What does that say? Ooh, ah. Turbo Smart. I like the guys at Turbo Smart. I use a lot of their stuff. Comes with a fancy spinny wrench. Propaganda. instructions. And then a big fatty wastegate. That should flow, right? It should be good. Whoop! Yeah, I can't push it. Must have a good spring in it. But the other thing it comes with, like I was talking about on your do-it-yourself turbo kit. That's the lower flange. That seals it. And then we should have, yes, we do. So we have V-bands for this part of it, or for this part of it rather, so that we can use those to weld on a little standoff, and we can mount that, and we have exhaust going to our wastegate. So this is very cool. This is good size. This is bigger. I've not used one of these this size before. You can see very bigness. And we've got some over in this little side pocket over here. A little bit of boost, a little bit of boost, a little bit more boost, all the boost, and then you just start stacking those all in there, and then it's all the boost. So that's good stuff. So we got Turbo Smart wastegate goodness. That's all good. Put you down here. I need to see what wastegate they put in there to start with. Luckily for me, they put a wrench in there, and I can take that apart and we can spring it for something to start with. The reason that I forgot my wrench. That's what happens. You leave stuff out and then you go to work on it and then it's not there. I don't have that size wrench. I have the other ones for the smaller gates. The ones that we use on the Big Bang and most of the other stuff are the 45 millimeter hyper gates. They're the Gen 5 stuff. So they're water cooled, but we almost never run them water cooled. But that's a big one. And the reason that I got that, I'm sending to my buddy Jimmy Hiddle. And so shout out to Jimmy. Jimmy is the guy that has the 3.2 J series swapped NSX because the 3-liter that was in it let go. They used to drag race it, and that car went 10s, I think, with the old 3-liter, and they were making good power. But because it's so expensive to put together an NSX motor, the C series, he just did what we would all do and go get a junkyard J series, and has gone through it, and now it's has the ability to make lots and lots of power. Pretty easy to make more than 600 at the tire with it. But the problem he's having with it is the wastegate that he has, which I think is a small tile, like a 44 or something, is not big enough, and it doesn't have the boost control it needs. So this is going to help him do that because he wants to run it around. He wants to be able to control the boost and then adjust the boost because he also has an electronic controller. So he wants to be able to decide what the boost curve is, not just if you have a 7-pound spring in it and you happen to get 15 at the top or 20 or whatever the number is. That's not good control. You want to say, look, I want 7. Okay, it's going to be 7. It's going to be 7 all the way across. You need to have enough wastegate to do that. All the electronic control in the world won't do that if your wastegate won't control that. If it doesn't have enough flow. So you need a wastegate that has enough flow. So you need the wastegate has to have enough flow, and then the outlet turbo sizing has to be positioned, and it also has enough flow. So hopefully that's going to solve the problem. And then he can he might be doing some road racing with it too, which would be interesting, but he's definitely going to drag race it. So I think with his, I'm pretty sure, well, we know that this thing will go 10s. I'm thinking this thing might go 9s with this gate and full control on this J series that he's done. Getting the thing hooked up, it's an IRS and stuff, and so it'll be interesting to see if it doesn't break stuff. That will be the key. It'll be the balance between getting it hooked up and having it not hurt something. But it certainly has enough power, and it will have enough mile an hour to be able to do that. That little J series is impressive, and it's running really well. So it'll be cool. See, I'm going to send that out to him tomorrow, and we'll see what happens with it. So we'll see what you guys get going. Let's see what you guys got going on here. I'm going to scroll back a little bit. Good evening, all. 1 Liter Mafia is in the house. What happened to propane turbos? I've never run propane, but it's not Christmas yet. I know it is. It's kind of like Christmas. Factory ECU can work up to a point. It can work fine up to lots of points. I mean, Matt's already showed that, so you don't need a standalone ECU. Why can't you put it where the main catalytic converter is? Just like I did. That's it. That's right, Todd. My ammeter is 4 degrees right now. The turbo is going to love that. Seven minutes late. That's good. No weirdness. Well, Dean, we kind of expect that going in. Same thing you got. Is that what you got? That was the 60 millimeter, Todd? Is that what you used? That's cool. Turbo goodness. I want to get the intercooler and intercooler pipe pump combo from VS Racing for Black Friday. Are they having good sales? My buddy bought a twin turbo LS kit. We haven't opened it up yet. He was deployed when he bought it. Got to make time to go see him. Yep. Thanks for the Terriers rating guidance yesterday. Did you go watch some of those? Did you go down the rabbit hole? Yeah, the ratting stuff is pretty cool. That's Bruce Springsteen. That's nice. I like that. I saw him in concert several times. I was at, because of a very long involved story, I got to see him second row center in the Meadowlands, and while he was filming a video. so it was pretty VIP. Yeah, it is a K series NSX, not a K series, a J series. Everything's better with boost. That's right. Does anyone know about small block Chevys? Yeah, we know a lot about small block Chevys. It's all LS, and I don't really care. So far, I don't think we've talked about LS at all until you just brought it up. So budget everything except the wastegate. Yeah, wastegate is one of those things. Wastegate and injector, I usually would spend money on. Twin turbo 401. I would like to do an AMC. I just don't have one. Has anyone tried to run an International DT 466E turbo on a home build? I've never even heard of that. Lots of small block Chevys. Does your buddy have a channel to watch the NSX, or will he feature it on here? Both of those are going to happen. I need to talk to Jimmy and see. He might have videos up, and if he does, I'm going to be promoting his channel so he can get going. And I also want to do videos on it because we've done lots and lots of stuff together. We've been buddies for a long time, and that NSX is cool. I mean, it's that I put up some draggy stuff that he sent me on, probably on Instagram, maybe. I saw Bruce Springsteen in Louisville, Kentucky in early '85. I saw him in LA also. Will and sloppy stage 2 have piston valve clearance problems on an L86? No, that cam's got plenty of clearance. How do you size a wastegate? Well, usually it's better to go overkill on the wastegate. Got my water air intercooler yesterday. Going to put it on when I source the stock XR6T injectors and rail and 4-bar map sensor. 4-bar, that's a lot. What is the power output of that DT466 turbo? What engine is that on, and what is the rated power output? Jet Black. So you saw the draggies on Instagram? That 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 technology is really very cool. I mean, I'm very impressed by it. So today, finding out that there are not many turbos that will handle 35 psi at only 230 horsepower. Yeah, did you look at the Garrett site? I'm sure that they have stuff there. Casey, you have to cut off 10 inches of your legs to fit in the NSX. I had an NSX for a long time. I had a 91, and I loved it. When I first started dating Lisa, I had that, and it was a fantastic car. It just, like everything, just needed more power. Any way to avoid boost spikes on an internal wastegate? We did some things way back where we did some porting to them to help the flow rate, but at some point it's going to be the internal valve size, and if you get to a point where you're just making too much power, the flow rate of the wastegate is not enough. 250 horsepower, 650 foot-pounds, but 250 horsepower, 2,000 RPM. I just don't know what those things will support when they're run on a gas motor, though. Once change spark plugs on a 4.8 in a Silverado. Looking online, it's a GT 3776. That's a fairly good size turbo. I mean, it's not going to be, you know, it's not going to be a 78, a 75, 78, or what is the, it's not going to be a 76 millimeter or 78 millimeter. It's not going to be something that's going to be like 1,000 horsepower stuff. Is the 5.7 Hemi a good platform for single turbo? Yeah, I've run turbos on Hemis a lot. J Pro Diesel software test drive, 31 pounds of boost. Is there online is saying 55 millimeters? Oh, you use a turbo finder and they told you you're probably not going to find that. They told you it doesn't exist. Twin S472s on a 5.7. That's what you want to run? Have you ever used Speedmaster cylinder head studs? I've never tried their studs. We've tried their bolts, and I won't use them because we've had some be really, really stretchy. Hot colors. It's not there's not a comparison between those two. Even if they tell you that they're listed as the same metallurgy, they're not the same. Interesting. So gap rings or need forged internals. You don't need forged internals, but ring gap is a good idea. Anybody here had a boost on a D-Series Honda? Yes, many, many times. And when we did all of the Big Bang motors got ARP studs on them, and the highest horsepower one, the Gen 4 6-liter, got the CA625 studs on it. So it got like all the studs. It got super studs. It got the Michael Jordan of head studs. That's right. I said Michael Jordan. So when I copper spray my used head gaskets, one cut or two. Well, how bad are they? Like, does it need 2 coats to fill in all the gaps? Killjoy, so far you've run 14 pounds of boost on a GT45 on a Gen 3 5.3 with no added rating gap. That's good. I have the 5.3 truck intakes laying around. Are they useless? No, the 5.3 truck intakes, you can make 1,000 horsepower with those, so they work fine. A lot of guys don't like them. The 2 reasons that people don't like them the most has nothing to do with power, because they work really well. They don't look that great, and that's probably it. And no, they don't look that great, and they're sometimes they're too tall for some applications, so that they don't fit in low hood lines. I'm not showing my age with Michael Jordan. He's just way better than anybody that plays right now. Found that today there was a turbo version, an IHC Comanche 4-cylinder. LeBron is, if you go through all of the information, LeBron's is not now, and certainly not at the time was not what Michael Jordan was. Richard, what lifters would you use on a 6-liter turbo LS? 14 PSI, mild build. We run the junkyard stuff. That's what we ran in all the Big Bang motors. We ran the ones that came with the motor. We ran the ones that came with the motor. David Vizard takes his rod bearings out and flips them end for end. A rod bearing, the way it goes in is directional because it has a tang on it. Can you put them in either way? And I don't know how he claims 3 horsepower. I know for certain he never tested that. Torque Test channel did a good video on LS studs. I have seen that. I purchased $125 turbos for my 4.8 liter. It'd be better if it was bigger. a twin turbo of almost any size, even a 37 twin 3076s or GT35 82s will make more than a Hellcat will. Make more than a stock one will. But I don't know how modified this Hellcat is that you're talking about racing, because those can make a lot of power too. Is there a 5-speed LS combo that you like for a 550, 600 horsepower, a little fun car like the 5-liter days? What do you mean? A vehicle you mean, or an engine combo? Is there a turbo that will put out 65 PSI? Compound stuff will do that. That's why he flips the rods and the pistons. Do you just assemble the LS lifters and clean them first, or just use them? We just reuse them. I kind of want to, after watching a couple of the videos, I kind of want to take some apart on one of these junkyard motors. And I still have a couple of bags of used ones that came out of motors. I kind of would like to take them apart and clean them and see what's going on in there. A 500 horsepower 5.3, if that's what you're talking about. Because it would be would be the one that you would get from the wrecking yard. You get a 4.8 or a 5.3, and if you're going to get something from the wrecking yard, just get a 5.3. Any kind of camshaft and turbo will easily give you 600 horsepower. You're not going to get 600 horsepower NA from those. And if you want 600 horsepower combo, lucky for you, I have a video up on the channel. I have one dedicated to 500 horsepower motors and then one dedicated to 600 horsepower LS combos. And so you can get, like, there's, I don't know, 4 or 5 or 6 or 8 or 10 or something to choose from. D-stroke 6.2 versus a 5.3, which makes more power with the turbo. Well, a D-stroke 6.2 with a 4.8 crank is going to be bigger than a 5.3. So it should theoretically make more power just because it's bigger. Sorry, when I just got here, I was out in the shop flipping my rod bearings. Dean, that's an oxymoron though, because if you point a Californian dyno to Mecca, it would already be pointed at itself. Will LS2 head gaskets fit for an LQ9 motor? Yes. On boosted stuff, we normally run the LS9 head gaskets. I've read that lifters are extremely precise, so be careful about mixing parts. Yeah, don't take them all apart and put them in a pod and hope for the best. If I was doing it, I would start with taking one of them apart and do it one at a time. What are the weakest links in a D series engine when adding boost or upping boost? The first thing you're going to run into is you need to change the ring gap. If you put ring gap in it, then you can go a long way. What most people do is, what you should do is ring gap, head gasket, head studs. And then the tune obviously is critical for that stuff. Joel, I have LS combo videos for 1,000, please. I have that video up with lots of combinations for 1,000 horsepower, but an LS combo for 1,000 horsepower is just 1,000 horsepower turbo, and then any LS that has a camshaft in it. Anyone running aftermarket transmission coolers? See, Dean, that's what happens. A lot of guys will flip the bearing shells mid-season because the bottom bearing takes less of a beating than the top. So they're just flipping them top to bottom, right? They're not. When he says flip, I think it's like that direction. I'm like, I don't think that's going to work unless you just flip the flip the rod cap around. That's not going to work out very well either. Wow, Dean throwing shade. You just cannot beat the bang for the buck for LS. Yeah, they do work. A secret to 1,000 horsepower LS is E85. That's a good thing to have. Yeah, it's really hard to make 1,000 horsepower with pump gas. I mean, I think what's his name does it. I think I guess I have to go see Nelson more and see what they're doing over there. Use my force against me. That's right. The self force is strong in this one. Do you have a recommendation when it comes to E85 conversions, meaning injectors, OEM, flex fuel? I don't know about all the rest of the fuel assembly because I don't really deal with that on the engine dyno. We have our setup is already done so that we can run whatever kind of fuel that we want in it. But the injectors have to be a lot bigger, 25 or 30% bigger if you're going to run E85. Any downside of running a stock VVT cam with a turbo or supercharger? No, it will work. It's just that camshaft doesn't make very much power. My preference for 1,000 horsepower LS is 2 600 horsepower turbos and a cam. E85 10-1 sells the same ring gap of 28. Yes. Nelson does crazy stuff with all types of fuels, but hey, when the cubes are on your side, it does help. But I think that I haven't seen him do a 5.3 that's 1,000 horsepower on pump gas. I'm. It might be possible. Maybe I've never tried it. Maybe I have just put it in my mind that doesn't work. But maybe that is possible. I think maybe a low compression LS, but a big one like a 6 liter or bigger, with the right kind of camshaft in it, and then lots of boost and not very much timing and really good intercooler, maybe you can do that. Yeah, I think with the 1,000 horsepower pump gas thing, I would try to make more NA power, but I wouldn't use compression in doing that. I wouldn't use static compression in doing it. Wendell, it depends on what you got to tell me what you're trying to achieve with this D-stroked motor. We built one of those and I ran it with cathedral port heads and with rec port heads. It made a little bit more power with the cathedral port heads, probably because the compression was a little higher because the chamber was smaller on those. I don't think that that NA version had enough motor to utilize what like ported rec port heads had to offer. Like you'd have to make, is the rest of the motor a 700 or 750 horsepower NA motor on a D-stroke deal? No, you'd be much better off just leaving the regular stroke in it or putting a 4-inch stroke in it. Then you'd be able to use more of what the head has to offer. Because of your videos, I'm in the garage tonight filing rings for Turbo 5.3. I'm right there with you. I feel your pain. Bill, that would be a neat trick if you could make a spindle out of a solid chunk of steel. Nice. Especially with a file. Speaking of pump gas, I just bought the 6-inch on 3 intercooler. Actually, a few nice intercooler for the money. Pin density is actually pretty solid. I think for a lot of those things that those kits that guys are putting together, for the power level that you're running them at, they probably work really good. I mean, people, like I said, we've talked about this many times. People get wrapped up in the little thing. Oh, I have an intercooler that's 10% more efficient. Well, great. And you spend twice as much on it. Do I need that to make my 700 horsepower or whatever? No, you're fine. Any experience with Edelbrock ProFlow 4? I don't know what that is. Is that a like a carburetor looking fuel injection thing? If it's a 4-hole throttle body thing, I haven't run that particular one. When anybody says Edelbrock ProFlow, I think of the tunnel rammy manifold. What is the max safe boost on a 462 valve with forged rods, ring gap on the 85 stock heads and cam be? I don't know. Why would you want to run a lot of boost on a stock cam and stock heads? Because that basically is going to be a stock motor, but with forged internals. So you could have just put ring gap in it and run it with this, because you probably could have made just as much power with the stock stuff. And I don't know what the boost level would be, because it's more than just boost. It's boost and charge temperature and timing and air fuel, inlet air temp. All of those things are going to come into play there. But that motor is going to make like 300 horsepower stock on the dyno, the way that we run it, something like that. And then So even at 15 pounds, you're going to make 600. You'd be much better off putting a cam in it or ported heads. The Nelson twin turbo motor that was on the cover of Hot Rod belongs to my shop neighbor. That's cool. The trophies, these trophies right here are land speed records. The couple of them up here are right there. Those are go-kart trophies. Is 7-to-1 compression too low? It's lower than most people would run, except for air-cooled Porsche guys. Almost nobody would run it that low. 35 thousandths is a lot. I don't know what a 5.3 liter M code motor is. Is that a Ford? It's not a 351. Because when somebody says M code, I would think it's a 351 Cobra jet, but does Big Bang ring gap add blow by to the crankcase? We didn't really see a change in blow by from that sort of ring gap. On an air-to-water intercooler, doesn't matter what side you want the cold water going into, closest to the intake. I would put it closest to the turbo. What is considered high compression? I mean, it's all compression would be relative. Um, 16-to-1 would be high, and 7-to-1 would be low. So the other things in there would be the other things would be relative. Any extra ring gap will cause some blow by at lower RPM and heat. So then I guess we would need to get into to define some. Like it's 1 molecule more. Is that some? Or is it 2 molecules? Does it have to be like a plural thing? Anything below 8-to-1 is way too low compression for anything. It's a bold statement. These were not shifter carts. I did have a shifter cart. I had an SSC 125. Those were clutch carts. Richard, question on a cool factor, an 8-speed ZF8 pedal shift. Yeah, that is really cool. The other thing that's cool is if you have a Cutlass like that, is if you had no, but you have a K series in it, right? So a pedal shift would probably be better. If you had a V8 in it, then I would say you'd be cool if you had lightning rods in it. But do you have to call Brock? Is it Brock Yates? Bill, thank you very much. Hopefully I didn't miss somebody else here. I'm scrolling. Man, there's a lot of scrolling going on. Okay, I'm scrolling back down. I'm going back. I just want to make sure I didn't miss anybody that threw some. Actually, that's now because I'll be getting ready to go down to West Tech here before too long. So that's actually going to be spark plug money. That will buy me 1 split fire plug. I don't know what they cost, but I'm sure they're expensive. But I want to do lots of plug testing when I go down there. I think it's cooler than a manual. Yeah, it is. And plus, you can bam, 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 bam. Then you can do the downshifts and stuff. Or you could like backhole it really bad. Bill didn't. Oh no. Okay, I'm back. I just want to make sure I'm back. You're the man. Thanks for the hard work. Thank you for helping out. Building a 400 horsepower 4.8. What twin turbos would you recommend? Well, for just 500 horsepower, you could use 2 turbos that are pretty small. I'd go down to the 3076s or even smaller than that, maybe. And do you have your heart set on twins? Because twins are good. We know that. Or can you fit a single on there? I'll be running an intercooled M122 blower on it. Kevin, what motor are you running? What are you running? Oh, on the 2-valve. Okay. We ran the Ford Racing blower on the 2-valve, and that was a Sean Highland one. But that blower doesn't make very much power, and you won't have to worry about if you're running that Roots blower. The blower's not going to make enough power for you to have to worry about hurting that as long as the tune's right. M Code was the all aluminum block and head 325 horse into Denali. So that's an LS then, right? That's what I'm asking. I'm just asking what family is it? Is it a Chevy, a Ford, a Dodge? What is it? There's lots of stuff for the Nissan VG motor. You can put boost to them. They probably have headers for them. I don't know if anybody makes cams for them. Maybe regrinds. I'm scrolling. For power under boost, is there any benefit or drawback to low compression plus big boost versus high compression and less boost, assuming the same peak power output? The high compression and lower boost, if you made the same power, which I don't think you will, but if you did, if you limited that at power, that combination would be more responsive because the boost would come on sooner with higher compression because it'll make more low speed torque. So that would be more responsive. But I tend to think I haven't tested it directly, but if you bring octane into the thing, I think that the lower compression and more boost is definitely the way to go because I think that the tune has to be more critical with the higher static compression. How much horsepower do you think is possible for an NA LS motor, a 6-liter? Well, you have to tell me what your budget is because out of a 6-liter displacement being LS based, there are probably guys that can make, let's see, 364 times 2. Let's go big. I don't know, 900 or more if you really went after it. But not for the average person can't do that. It's really hard to make 600 horsepower with that. With a stock bottom end and heads, cam, and intake manifold, this 600 is pretty hard to get. So all of these things that would be above that would be race only things. Porsche 930 Carrera turbo lover. That's definitely going to be low compression. 6.5 or 7 to 1. The thing that motor needed was higher compression would help a lot. But if it was a 3-liter, it definitely needed to be bigger. If it was non-intercooled, it definitely needed an intercooler. And they definitely needed a better intake manifold. That pancake intake manifold is terrible. Is there a disadvantage of the 6-liter compared to the 5.3 or 4.8? No, people were talking about that for a long time about, well, the 5.3 is better because you have more room in between the cylinders so that you don't lose head gaskets. But so far, the Big Bang champion is the 6-liter, and it's made way more power because it starts out making way more power than the 4.8 or the 5.3 NA. I mean, it makes, you could make 550 to 600 horsepower depending on how you configure it, NA. And then you add boost to that. And then as a multiplier, you start getting really big power numbers at fairly reasonable boost levels. You need some split fires. I would like to test split fires, but they all need to be for like an LS application though. Gene Berg, I've met Gene, used to recommend 6.5 to 7 to 1 for VWs. Most guys nowadays run 9-1. Yeah, I think that compression would certainly be too low for. I hope he's talking about for a boosted one. That compression would be too low for an NA motor. I mean, these things aren't running like really high loads and high power levels for a long time. Have you ever run the Pro 44 Magnum on any of the builds? Stock cast crank doesn't take well to RPM due to lack of full counterbalance. If you put a Cobra crank in it, cam springs, you'll be able to max that out. I haven't seen that to be the case, Admiral. We've run 6,500 RPM on the 2-valve stuff a lot, and not had. I've never had one come apart on the dyno. If dual carbs is cool, so are twin turbos. That's right. Can you use methanol injection at a set boost level and above to make up for the lack of fuel octane? That can help. The problem with methanol injection is that, and especially if with any of these long runner manifolds, is it's hard to make sure that it gets to all of the cylinders evenly. And it only takes one cylinder not to have the detonation control to have detonation. So all the other ones are like, yeah, no, we're good. We're happy. We're fine. Oh, Joe over there, man, number 8. Yeah, he's having trouble. I don't think they even make split fires anymore. But there's got to be some weird plugs out there that are good. Twin turbo kits on eBay, headers with 2 1/4 primaries, twin T4 turbos, 2,300 Canadian. You don't need the headers and the primaries and all that. You can just buy 2 cheap turbos and just use stock exhaust manifolds. Would this be a decent setup for a 550, like a 557, like a big block Ford? The turbos are going to have to be pretty big for that. And if that's a 557 Ford and you only have 20 and 22 thousandths ring gap, I think I would go bigger on the ring gap. Tim, you can do it, man. You're the man. No, that was for a street VW motor that they were recommending back in the day. Was that, Casey, was that when they were doing the cowl look? Back in the day, didn't they lower the compression ratios for 871 blowers? It probably was in the 7-to-1s. I know that they had turbo pistons that were in the 7s, because even 8-to-1 was maybe for them not low enough. Imagine how different it would be if we controlled turbos based on airflow and not boost pressure. Something else about turbocharging Fox bodies is there were variants in the mounts. The vertical mount versus not vertical causes issues. Does your computer chair double as a racing seat? It does. It is very like racing. Take a look at that. I wanted to say Recaro on it, but I don't make Recaro kind of YouTube money. Phone's gonna die. All right, Cody, we'll see you. I know I got to get back downstairs. We're watching The Great Wall with Matt Damon, one of the premier powerhouse actors of our generation, and the Taute. I do need a 5-point harness. Sometimes it gets a little crazy, and Milo just looks up at me like, dude, you're just talking. You're talking to yourself. There's nobody else there. There's literally nobody else there. Recommendation for super budget turbo. Doesn't the 2.3 turbo already have a turbo on it? I have an 02 Camaro Z28. Is 5.7 good for a budget turbo? Yeah, they'll work fine. Just put ring gap in it. I know we didn't have a poll tonight. What's a crank scraper worth? I don't know. It depends on what motor you have it on and how bad it is to begin with and all of that. They want me to get a cage and then I'll have to do all the chassis certs. I need to find a machine shop with those fancy ruby probes for measuring stuff. The digitizers. Fancy ruby probes. I'm gonna have to tell that to Mahovitz next time I go see him. Where's your table that has the fancy ruby probes on it? Can you click them together 3 times and say there's no place like home? That's right. Please explain the difference between a 671, 871, 1471, and what the numbers mean. Those are all going to be the displacements. What they're showing you is the displacements of the superchargers, but what they refer to, I think, is the applications that they had them on for these harken back to the days of Detroit diesel engines. And I think that aren't they displacements, guys? Somebody's going to, if Dan's here, he's going to answer it. Somebody's going to know. I don't want to tell you the wrong thing, but these were originally diesel engines, and they were actually kind of scavenging pumps for diesel engines. The 6 and the 871s were okay because those were actually production ones, right? And the other ones are just aftermarket ones. 71 cubic inches per revolution on each cylinder. Okay. 3, 4, 6, 8. So they were used on because they made smaller versions of those, which I want to find either a 371 or a 471, which would be cool to put on the trophy 4-cylinder. Number of cylinders and displacement. Okay, I thought that was right. Your Honda NSX Instagram video is proving elusive to find. It's worth a repost. Okay. XR4 Ti has a stock T3 with a 60 turbine, but I was thinking of having different turbos for each part of the competition. Autocross and drag. Is the turbo that you're using on there right now fairly effective? I mean, there are lots of upgrades for those that will still work and still be fairly responsive. Hopefully you've done stuff to the motor already. Have you done a cam and a ported head, and does it have a tubular header or something? I mean, so tell me what's going on with it. And then there are other small T3, T4 turbos that you could put on there. Like that Disco Potato is not bad for that application. "10-inch rotor length on the 471s. They had 171s. I'd never heard of that though. 671 is 420 cubes per cylinder, 7 liters per turn. They also made a 271. I haven't heard of either a 171 or a 271. I've heard of 3 4s and on up. Yeah, Carla, people are telling you that you can measure, fascists saying you can measure everything with basic machines, instruments. When we use adapters on the engine dyno, Even the bell housing, because the bell housing on the engine dyno have been run thousands of times, I'm sure. And so they're all hogged out, but it still works. So I don't know how exactly precise that stuff needs to be. 16 horsepower per cubic inch on LS build, that would be a lot. You'll find the 1471 real handy to have. Does Freiburger have a 471? The dyno has broken when we've been using it a couple of times, but not we didn't break it because we overpowered it. The Disco Potato is a name for a specific turbo. It's a GT, I think it's a GT28, I think, if I remember right. Wyatt, there should be some really cheap turbos available out there that would be an upgrade for that little T3 that's the factory one. Does yours have a if it's a Merkur, does it have the 48 or 63 or 82 hot side? Because maybe you could also adjust that for what you're doing. You need a 671 on a J series. Has a 6.3 hot side. Okay, because they did make an 8.2 and they made a 4.8. So the 4.8 is would be a bit more responsive, because we ran all of those on a B series Honda one time on a 1.6 liter, and the 1.6 liter obviously is smaller in displacement than the 2.3 liter, but it did make more power than the NA 2.3 liter, at least any kind of stock one. Yeah, and they use them. I used to know this, but this has been a lot of years ago. I used to remember what applications. I thought that they used different ones on the automatic versions of those cars, on the Turbo T-Bird and on maybe the Mustang, if they had an automatic version on the Mustang, and then on because they may have used that same T3 on the Turbo Mustang, like the non-intercooled, non-SVO version. So it was a stick and an automatic, and then there was another application where they used the 0.82, which was, I think, was the hard one for us to find, if I remember right. Tim, I don't think I'd choose either one of those for a Fox body turbo combination, because I don't think you need those displacements to make lots and lots of power. 8788 T-Bird is IHI. I didn't put the 6 liter back on that 6 liter engine has a problem. Not a problem. It has a water leak, and I think it's coming up through it's one of two things. I haven't figured it out yet. I just haven't spent enough time on it. It's one of two things. It's either the bolt holes, the bosses for that go down into the block for the head studs. Those are cracked. And so there's water coming up through the head stud, because whenever we run that, we're getting water into the motor, and it's coming up through through the studs. Or the other thing that's possible is those trick flow heads have the bolt hole or the bosses water's coming up through those. So I need to pressurize it and see. I already have the stock bottom end 351. I'm looking to do better. Best off the shelf turbo kit. I don't ever test turbo kits. We just make them. We just make them. And on that note, it's time to go. Got my beautiful wife waiting for me. And Matt Damon. And Monsters. It doesn't get it. Saturday night just does not get any better than that. Thank you guys all for showing up. And as always, I will see you guys in the morning. If you haven't, please go take a look at the video that I put up. We didn't even talk about that. The 5-liter Ford, one cam to rule them all. 306, 331 stroker, nitrous motor, Torque Storm supercharger, and a turbo. Guess what? One cam worked in all of those. How is that even possible? Because that's not the only cam that will do that. All of those cams will do that. Thank you all for showing up. I will see you all tomorrow morning. Bow, 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 bow.